Right. Hello and welcome, Just a Family. This is giving you something to talk about, or Just a Live TV, as I like to call it. Today, we're talking about emotional health and stability, and what a topic that is. We're going to be discussing our emotional health in all aspects and how we can create emotional stability. Today's episode has been sponsored by Phoenix Identity. When you learn to control your emotions, you learn to control your life. Join the Rockstar Method Facebook group today and learn how to control your emotional health and wellness to create emotional stability. Link in the description to go and join that Facebook group. I know that they're going to be doing weekly lives to go in and teach you how to use the Rockstar Method. So go and check that out. I'm going to hand it over to our guest speaker today. Reneau, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Reneau Peurifoy, excuse me, and I'm an author. The current book that I'm just released is Why You Feel the Way You Do, and was a counselor for 20 years and taught at a college for another 20 years, and now I'm retired from that, and I write and I teach and do speaking engagements and programs like this. So it's been good, a lot of fun.
That's good. Well, I'm glad you have fun doing it. Let's hope we have another fun episode. So you and I are both passionate about emotional health, and go ahead.
No, I mean, helping people is something I've always been about, and that's part of what I'm hoping this book will do, is to help people get a better handle on, what their emotions are, why we have them, and some tools for how to deal with them more effectively.
Absolutely. A lot of people don't know how to control their emotions. My husband and I were talking about it the other day, and I mentioned this in yesterday's episode too. Is he's like, why can't we just be who we are? Why can't we just feel what we're feeling and react the way that we react? And he's absolutely right, but to a certain extent. And one of the things that you and I, and your new book, why we feel the way that we do. So why?
Well, yeah, and if you just let go, then you're a 2-year-old, right? So we have too many of those running around. Yeah, emotions, they're messages. They're messages about needs and wants, and you need to be aware of it, but you need to not act out your emotions. You need to act upon them. You need to take that information and decide, okay, what am I going to do with that? Do I need to set limits? Do I need to, change some life goals? You need to maybe set some limits with the relationships, or maybe you need to find some relationships. So it's just information. And once you start to look at it that way, I think they become easier to deal with.
You're absolutely right. Look at when you're happy, right? If you go and try something,
Well, I'm sorry.
that's totally fine.
I forgot to turn that thing off.
That's totally okay. When you try something for the first time, let's say you go and you try dancing for the first time, and you remember the feeling and the excitement and the exhilaration and the happiness that you feel when you start dancing for the first time. That's a message, right? That's information, that's knowledge that says, "Oh, I like that. We need to do that again." Same goes for negative emotions. When you try something new and you don't like it and you're feeling those negative emotions and feelings, that's another message that say, "Hey, I don't like that. I don't want to do it again. Maybe, something needs to change." So depending on what it is that you're doing or why the emotions are being triggered in the first place, they are messages. And people don't know that.
Well, precisely, and sometimes it takes a while to figure out what that message is. The two big negative ones, of course, are anger and fear, and sadness would be the other one. And again, I use those in a very broad sense. Anger can be just irritation to rage, and fear can be everything from just apprehension to panic, and sadness can be everything from just disappointment to deep depression. And essentially, with sadness, we're dealing with loss, right? And so once you start to identify, well, where is the loss? Then what do I do with that? And I think another thing about emotions is everybody has behaviors that they do that are tied to specific emotions. And people are often very out of touch with their emotional network. And so one of the things that I do is I try to get people to identify, what do you do behaviorally? How do you act differently? For example, when you're really angry, and if you just think about times when you were really angry, there were things that you did, ways that you talked, things that you did. Same thing when you were really anxious about something, or when you're really disappointed or sad about something. And so as you start to identify those things, then you can say, okay, gee, I'm doing my anxious behavior. So Anxiety and fear, or anxiety and anger, are both threat related. So where's the threat? With sadness, we're talking about disappointment. So, for example, I have a friend moves away that I'm really close to. And, that's, well, I'm going to miss him, but that's okay. And I find myself kind of moping around, spending a lot of time, playing stupid computer games or things like that. Oh, this is my sad behavior. So what's going on? Okay, well, my friend moved away. So what's that all about? Well, okay, that's relationship, right? So I need to find a new relationship, since he's no longer available. And if I don't have, I either need to pull on those that I have, or if I don't have any that's close, I need to find some people I can form a relationship with. And that's kind of how you work with it when you're working in counseling. Is you just kind of work backwards. What's the need, or the want, or the threat that's present, and then what do we do about it? How do we come up with a plan of action?
Yep. I have my own example of that. I like to tell people I can be vindictive and volatile. And I
No,
absolutely can.
no,
I
no, not
absolutely
you.
I absolutely can be. But
Yeah,
it's when I'm needed. So
yeah.
the other day, we are lying on the couch where we had a family movie night. And we watched the new Mario movies. So we're having a family movie night. And it's all over. The girls are excited. And my husband and I, he's going out for a cigarette and I'm sitting on the couch. And all of a sudden, my daughters are really hyper and they're play fighting. And one of them falls on the side of the couch onto me. And her head absolutely smashes onto the bone of onto my shoulder.
Okay.
And I bruised my bone at this point. And when I get hurt, or if I feel threatened, my instant reaction, because as most of you have heard me say many times before, a reactional is an emotional reaction to a stimulus, where a response is, mental. It's a logical response to something that you've processed.
Not always.
But for me,
Yeah.
the reaction was I got angry, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you two doing? Why are you doing that? And I got angry. So when I get hurt, my go-to reaction is angry and lashing out because I'm hurt. And then, so I've learned over the years how to control that and how not to give into that immediate reaction.
Well, and a lot of our behavior is unconscious. And you have to practice, like with anger, like when you deal with anger management, the first thing you try to lock into place is walk away strategies.
Mhm.
It's training yourself when anger comes up, shut up and just take a moment to calm down so you can plug into the rational, because that initial response is an unconscious response that's coming from, childhood experiences and just your wiring, that type of stuff. So there are things that people do that are unconscious. In fact, that's what triggers are all about, that people experience. When you go through your day, you're on automatic pilot most of the time. I mean, think about just walking. Your subconscious mind is judging distance. It's looking for dangers. It's also looking out for things that might be beneficial. It's looking for obstacles. And all the while, you're thinking about what you're going to have for dinner, or what TV program you're going to watch. And that's wonderful that our mind can take care of all that stuff. But as we grow up, we get a lot of things that are identified as good or bad that maybe not be actually good or bad for us. And our response to those are kind of automatic. But then again, as you start to notice those things and kind of come up with those patterns, then you can start to develop like those walk away strategies or other things where you can kick the mental part of your brain, the thinking part in. And that's the part I think that people don't do a lot of times, is they react, especially like to triggers from either childhood abuse or adult trauma that they've experienced. One of the things that I'll often do is I'll use a little technique called what's happening, what's real, where once we identify what some of the things are going on that are triggering you, or what are some of the environmental triggers, is you start to tell yourself when you're triggered, okay, what's happening is, the example I use a lot is a lady I worked with who had a person at work who would make her very anxious, and she didn't understand why. And as we thought about it, he resembled an abusive parent. And so the triggering was his voice and his mannerisms. And so whenever she was going to be around him at a meeting or something, she'd say, well, I'm going to be around this person, reminds me of that parent, but he's not. He's just a person. He's a nice guy, a friend of the guy. This triggering response is just an unconscious automatic behavior pattern. And she desensitized to him. And that's the other part about a lot of these automatic responses we have is we have to learn to desensitize to them. It's just like when you work with a phobia. You start with the simple things that are to do, and you gradually build up to something that is more difficult. Like with water phobia, I had a lady I worked with, and we just started with sitting next to the pool, and then slowly getting to where she would put her feet into it, and eventually get into it completely, all the while managing her anxiety and the thoughts that would come up. Because again, you go onto automatic pilot, and the first thing is, oh my gosh, water! I got to get away. This is terrible. I got to get away. And no, you got to slow that down. And I'm safe. There's, her brothers used to tease her that there were sharks in piranhas in the water that were going to eat her toes, right? So that was the genesis of this water phobia for her. Family is wonderful that way. Brothers and sisters, they provide therapists with all kinds of work. But
Or
anyway,
watching movies.
movies too.
Mhm.
But you can desensitize to literally anything. When you look at what people get desensitized to, like in the medical field, in warfare, just in general life around the world, if you go about it correctly, you can desensitize to anything. And that's basically what you do with triggers and negative emotional responses. Is once you identify it, well, where does it get triggered? What are some of the things that caused it to be triggered in the past? And then you give yourself some self-talk, some tools to manage your body. If it's anxiety, you'll do things like breathing tools as well as distraction tools, as well as the self-talk tools. And then you just start practicing in easy situations until you get comfortable with them. Then you move on to the next one.
Yep. Part of those tools are what I've combined in the Rockstar method that I created.
Mhm.
And in that method, it's recognize how you feel, own how you feel, claim your own power over how you feel. Kneel, because that one's important. I'm not going to go into detail on what that one is today. But,
Right.
and then, and then the rest of it. Not, like I said, I'm not going to go into it all today, but it's so important to know, for anybody listening or catching the replay, you can control your emotions. That instant reaction that you have where that emotion becomes apparent, that's going to happen regardless, right? You're always going to have that instant emotion, but you get to decide whether it controls you or whether you control it. And that's when you learn how to control those emotions and you desensitize to those triggers, to those events, to those whatever may be going on, you start to take control back. And then you get those opportunities, you get the experiences, the knowledge, the ability to, move into different paths.
You start to making conscious choices, which is good. Yeah, and there is a caveat to this. Old patterns will emerge when you are sick, hungry, tired, or stressed. And that's an important thing, because a lot of times people are very out of touch of when they are really stressed out. And the first time they become aware of it is when these old patterns are starting to pull at them. And so coming to terms with that and just understanding that that's just life. Occasionally you'll dip into them. And the better you manage stress in your life and are aware of when you're under stress, the more you'll have control over your emotions during those times. And one of the ways you do that, again, is identify what are your behaviors or your body symptoms that tell you you're getting stressed out. So one of the ones that I often talk about with myself is, well, you have to understand my father was in the Navy, career Navy guy. And so sometimes there's a change in how I use language. And so that's, one of the things I do when I start to get stressed out. I start to spend time with stupid things like computer games and things, and those are just indicators to me that something is chewing on me, something is bothering me, or maybe I've been doing too much. And so then I need to start looking at my stress management strategies and, delay important decisions, because when you're stressed out, everything becomes important, right? Everything your kid's done wrong, got to be corrected right now. Whatever your mate bugs you, suddenly this becomes a big issue, which when you're not stressed out is not a big issue. So understanding that, okay, I'm stressed out, my emotions are going to be a little bit more on edge, some of those old triggers are going to be firing, so I just need to kind of take care of business, let all the other stuff slide, focus my energy. I use the idea that the body is a machine with a limited amount of energy. I'm not Superman. I do, some days my tank is on half full. And so I need to decide, what am I going to do? Focus on taking care of those things and let all that other stuff that comes into my mind just wait for a day when I'm not so stressed out. Simple as it sounds, that's something that oftentimes people have a hard time doing.
Well, and this has been something I've been passionate about for the last, 10 years,
Mm,
is how people need to process those emotions. We
yeah,
came into a period about 7, 8 years ago where the positivity movement really became popular. And my opinion on that movement, when I got involved in the coaching sphere and with mental health, was it became a toxic positivity where it was like no negativity, no, if somebody's negative, you cut them out right away. Or if you feel negative, just think positive. And it was all of these great techniques that
yeah,
really were used in a very toxic way. And since then, it really got me thinking, and hence why I started the things that I've started, is we've never been taught how to properly process our emotions, how to process our traumas, how to process and go through what we're going through in a healthy way so that we can use what we've experienced, use what we've learned to move forward in a positive way.
mm,
And that's a very big key that we're missing in what we're teaching ourselves, our children, our friends and family, and
mm,
so on and so forth. But one of the things that I really wanted to mention on this episode is the reason why emotional stability and emotional health is so important. We talk about mental health. Our mental health is directly linked to our emotional health, in
oh
my opinion.
yeah,
If your emotional health is out of whack, your mental health, your physical health, your life will become out of whack because your emotional health is so all over the place. And when you're emotionally unstable, and there's nothing wrong with that, there are times where I'm emotionally unstable and I'm an expert in it. I'm sure Reneau would probably say the same, where we do flip back into old patterns. But what ends up happening is when you're emotionally unstable, you make decisions based on those emotions. And that is one of the worst times to make
oh yeah, yeah.
decisions, when you're emotionally charged by, when you're charged by those
Yeah.
emotions, right?
And oftentimes that's during a time of high stress.
Yep. Doom and gloom, right? If you're stressed out about
Yeah.
money, about your relationship, right? So many of you may believe in it and many of you may not, and that's totally okay. You're entitled to your opinions, and I value and appreciate
Mm,
them. I'm a psychic intuitive medium. So again, whether you believe it or not, that's
mm,
completely up to you. But one of the things that I'm asked when people come to me if they wanted a reading is, oh, is my partner cheating on me? Am I going to get a divorce? So I'm specifically talking about relationships here. And one of the things I've made very clear in my own practice is I'm not going to tell you your outcome. If I tell you your outcome, or if I tell you what I'm being shown today, you're going to make decisions based on that. Right
right.
now, if somebody comes up to you and says, or if you feel as though, let's say your partner's cheating and you feel like they're cheating, you're going to do things and say things based on that belief. You're going to self-sabotage that entire relationship based on that one thought, based on that one scenario that you've got that you can't get out of your head. And everything that you do from that point on is going to be based on that thought process. They're cheating on me. I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm upset. I'm insecure. I'm going to blow it up before it gets a chance to blow up in my face. Right. And it becomes this negative, this whole spiral. And this can be your career. It can be your life in general, your relationships, your finances. When you get stressed out, you make decisions that are going to make it worse.
Right. Boy, that's a whole lot in there. I used to tell my clients I'm a positive realist. Sometimes life sucks, but you got to deal with it. Uh, at the same time, the whole idea of what's happening, what's real, is recognizing what is going on, but what's real and what can I do about it. And one of the things when you talk about emotional stability, positive psychology, the research has been going on since 2000, has identified three key factors in a person's life. They call it in terms of satisfaction and happiness, but that also promotes emotional stability. And number one is relationship. And I think that's the area that a lot of people, especially younger people nowadays, have a hard time with, is how to have healthy relationships. And I think social media has, for many people, been a very negative factor with that, because I've got 500 friends on Facebook, but I don't have anybody I can really talk to about what's going on inside of me, and the need for healthy, positive relationships with other people. And that doesn't mean it's always good. I mean, human beings are, we're messy little critters sometimes, but being
Yeah.
able to have somebody you can be transparent with and real with, and talk to about the good and the bad times, and they're going to accept you, is important. And so many people don't have that nowadays. And of course, number two is purpose, having a reason why I'm getting up in the morning. And three kind of touches on some of the stuff you were talking about, which is meaning. How do I put things into context when I am sick, or I lose my job, or I'm having money problems, or something else tragic has happened in my life. And those three areas, when you look around, our country right now, it's they're in short supply for a lot of people. When you look at people who go through horrible things and they come out relatively intact, you'll find that they had a relationship that helped to pull them through, that they had a context, that meaning. And by that, I'm talking about the big questions, is there life after death? Is there God? Is this all there is? Am I just a little mechanical being that's going to disappear, when I die? These types of things become really important for people to take a look at. Of course, I have some definite thoughts about that. Without trying to get into specific religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs, I think people should look at some of the near-death experience research that's gone on, because regardless of what you think about it, the evidence has shown that there's something going on there when people have these experiences. There's an international organization that's cataloged now thousands of experiences like this. Oftentimes, well, not often, but many times, the things that people experience in the operating room, in the next room next to them, or miles away, have gone out and been third-party verified that yes, this has happened. So something's going on. Where you go with that, I think I'll leave up to individuals, but there is more to this life than just what we see. And once you get a hold of that, then you start to process that and come up with a belief system. It helps you deal, I think, with some of the tragedy that's going on in the world, as well as oftentimes in one's person's personal life.
Yeah. I love all that. Absolutely love all that. And you've hit a lot of my points right on the head. We are individuals, right?
Yeah.
We all have to have a sense of self, a sense of identity, a sense of who we are and what we believe, and how we deal and how we process. And it is individualistic, right? I can't tell, I can, because I'm different, but most people can't tell you how you feel, can't tell you how you would react to a situation or how you would respond to a situation. I was looking for a paper, so sorry about all my paper shuffling. One of the points that I was trying to make prior to this is, you know how they say that hurt people hurt people? Is a very true statement. And when you have an assumption about something, let's say it's a belief or a situation, you have this assumption, and that assumption is emotional based, right? It's your mindset, your emotions telling you that you believe something a certain way. You will create an action on it, and that action, if you're angry, is a negative action. If you've processed, or creating that action based on an emotion is going to create the outcome that you're trying to not to create.
Well, I think we're talking chicken and egg here, because emotions are a response to how you're interpreting the world, and your interpretation is based upon belief systems. And there is objective reality. I know people like to say, well, everything's relative. Well, that's not true. There are objective realities, and people a lot of times have things that they believe that when you test them against reality are not true. And sometimes that comes from, again, experiences when they're young, where they've had abusive situations, or situations where maybe they've gotten a skewed view of the way people are, or who they are, how they operate and stuff. And so I think it is useful to take a look at, what have you believed about the world? Is it safe? Is it not safe? Can I succeed? One of the things I did with clients is I would take early recollections. I would do a little genogram of their family of origin, and then I'd take some early recollections of what their grade school experience was like. And I'd say, I don't need to know what was good or bad, just what was that like for you? Because that's when people get a sense for, do I have power in the world? Can I actually accomplish the things I want to accomplish? Junior high school would be the next set. And that's where the train could go off the rails there very easily too, just because of the peer pressure and all the crazy things that go on at that period of time. And then the third set would be, high school, which is when you're kind of starting to finish that adult stuff, getting ready to launch into the adult world. And of course, early adulthood, you're still changing a lot. And from those experiences, I could tell an awful lot about a person. And I could just say, I would guess that you probably have trouble with whatever. And then they would look at me and say, Joy, you're some kind of an amazing, psychic prophet person. No, it's right there on the paper, you just have to look. But we don't do a lot of introspection nowadays. And I think that's another problem is people used to have a lot of time, and we're so busy rushing from one event to another, always having some kind of noise going on, in our earbuds or on our radio or whatever.
TikToks.
Yeah, or waiting for that next little, dopamine push from our iPhone or whatever. People don't take time just to be quiet and to really think about stuff. Think about what's been going on today. How do I really feel about that? What do I think about that? How am I going to integrate that into who I am and my worldview? So that's another thing that I'm a big fan of.
The funny part is it doesn't actually take that long. Once you learn how to do it, it doesn't take that long. I'm going to tell you, my husband, I'm so proud of him. The other day, my husband has been angry for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to help him. Of course, we know that it's not easy to help the ones we love. Mm-hmm. It's really not. But I taught him my rock star method. Mm-hmm. And I made him do it one day. And he was in the midst of something the other day, and he was telling me about it, and he did the rockstar method without, he tweaked it to his own, which is the goal, right? We want everybody to tweak our tools to make them their own. And he tweaked it to his own. And I'm like, whoa, did you just seriously do that right now? I was so excited, so proud, because he was able to move through an emotion logically. Right. And, finding that outcome that worked for him so that it wasn't, he wasn't emotionally reacting or responding to the stimulus. He sat down and thought about it. Oh, we were watching a movie. When we were watching the Mario movie the other day, there was a lot of just stimulus. And I think he was oversensitized to the girls were making noise. We were eating snacks, the movie. My husband's a very much, when we're watching a movie, be quiet. I want to pay attention to the movie. No noise. This is but everything was kind of going on. And he was really struggling with that. So he paused the movie, walked away, went and had a cigarette. And while he was having a cigarette, he's like, how do I feel right now? Mm-hmm. Why do I feel this way? And he, like I said, he used my rockstar method, and he came back calm and collected and said, I'm not going to let this get to me. I'm going to go back. I'm going to enjoy the movie. And then he told me about it. And I was so shocked and amazed and super proud, because he made it work. And we've been together 15 years. And that was the first time that I had seen him do something like that. And it was cool. It was such huge. But again, once you learn the concept of these things, it's actually very simple, and it takes mere minutes to process through those emotions, right?
And the key, I think, is learning to, in fact, when you look at people who deal with their emotions well, you see that they will pause for a moment and collect themselves before they take action. Mm-hmm. And we're in a world right now where people don't do that. They just bleh, whatever is going on, And you do find people who process emotions well, who've come from families where they just modeled that. They're the adults. That's one of the key things that I find that is often missing, is that ability to just train yourself. And it is a matter of training, because again, 2-year-olds don't do this, right? And we have a lot of adults walking around who are just big 2-year-olds, and learning that, no, I need to just close my mouth and pause for a moment. If I have to walk away, I walk away and take a moment to see, okay, what's going on, and what do I need to do about this situation?
Yep. My whole family,
Yeah.
all of my 4 children, my husband included, and
Mhm.
everybody else, they know that I'm easily angered. I'm not gonna lie, I'm absolutely easily angered. I'm very emotional and I'm passionate. And that's natural. For a lot of people, that is natural. So what I've learned to do over the years is I need to take a step back.
Yeah.
And so when I feel like my emotions are starting to get riled, I say, okay, this is not the day, not the time.
Yeah.
You need to back off, or I need to walk away for a few minutes so that I can cool down. And I will pre-warn them. You're pushing my buttons and you're pushing me past that point. Once I get past that point, it's no return, right?
Yeah.
And I've had people not let me walk away, and like taking my power away. And that's by standing
Yeah.
in front of the door and not allowing me to leave the room.
Yeah.
Um,
They will learn.
yes. So in moments like that, of course, my full
Mm.
violent, volatile, angry
Yeah.
self comes out, and then they regret it, because in that moment,
Mm.
I don't care who you are, I don't care whether I love you. My goal is to hurt you and get you away from me at that point. And that's I think where we've gotten with that anger, right? And a lot of people not knowing how to process that. I am the definition of that. I spent a good portion of my life giving into that anger and the words. And when I feel angry, hurt, or backed into a corner, my go-to is to lash out, and I'm going to hurt you or make you feel worse than I do at
Yeah.
that point. And again, I've learned to control that.
Mm.
But you're right, we don't take the time to process, we don't take the time to think about how we feel, what we want. And again, I'm going to go back to the positivity movement for a moment. That toxic positivity movement, and there's pros and cons to everything,
Mm.
but when you got into the toxic sphere of that movement, it became no negativity whatsoever. There's no processing, there's no going back, there's no identifying what the issue is or the trigger is. It is just my life is perfect. And for people who do that, I'm sure, I'm assuming you will most likely agree with this, if not totally fine, but
Mm.
that's a volcano waiting to happen. When you are not processing your negative emotions and your thoughts and your feelings, that is a volcano ready to erupt. It's not going anywhere. You might ignore it and push it aside, but it's not actually going to go anywhere. And you eventually will have no choice but to deal with those emotions. COVID did that. The pandemic, people who had never engaged with or entertained any negativity had no choice during COVID but to acknowledge their crappy emotions, pardon my language, but their emotional health, because it was thrown literally in their face.
Yeah, that's a whole topic in itself. But yeah, like I said, I'm when I work with people, I'm a positive realist. Human beings are human beings, and they have a broad spectrum of things that they experience, and learning to deal with them. There was a really interesting study. It's actually still going on. Started in '72 in New Zealand, the New Zealand study, and they took all the babies born for a year, and they just started studying their mental, emotional, sociological, all their characteristics. And then when genetics came along, they started doing all that studies. And so for 50 years, they've been studying this group of people. And one of the interesting things is they found that the babies, they could divide them into like the 5 different groups, which maintained throughout the time. And one of the chief things they found that helped kids be a success was teaching them how to control themselves.
Mhm.
And the under controlled group was the ones that got in the biggest trouble in terms of drugs and crime and that type of stuff. So yeah, this idea of teaching yourself, and by control doesn't mean suppression. Suppression is different from managing your emotions. And I think you were trying to make that point. And what you were saying is I can be angry, but again, I don't have to act it out. I can train myself to walk away, take some time to process it, see where that's coming from, and then come up with a plan of action that's going to take care of my needs in an appropriate way. I usually say with the least amount of harm to myself and others. You know, if your behavior is doing that, then you're asserting yourself in a way that is appropriate.
Yep.
And again, some people are fortunate; they grow up in families where that's all modeled to them, so that becomes a natural part of who and what they are and how they manage stuff. A lot of people don't, though, and so then as an adult, you can go back and learn these tools. I think that's the good news: is you don't have to stay stuck with where you were, whether it's been 20 or 30 years or more. You can train yourself to act and think differently. It takes time. One of the analogies we use a lot is the computer analogy. You know, I'm going to change my program, rewrite it, or delete these files or whatever. And we are not computers. We are organic beings. And memory works like a muscle. You have to train it. And it may be weak at first, but as you train it and work it, then it gets stronger, and it will be functioning most of the time, again, except, as I said a long time ago, when you're sick, hungry, and tired, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then some of that old stuff will come up, and that's when you just gotta take care of business and let everything else go, you know.
And perfect spot to just about end it. And I'm gonna plug our sponsor today, the Rockstar Method Facebook group. Go and join that. You want to learn how to control your emotions, and like Reneau said, do not suppress them. It's not about suppression, it's about control, acknowledgement, and control. So go and join the Facebook group, learn all about the Rockstar Method, and get started on having healthy emotional stability and control. All right, is there anything else you'd like to add before we get going?
Well, the new book is Why You Feel the Way You Do, so it's always I think you'll find a lot of things that I've been talking about today in that book, so it gives you some alternate ways of dealing with stuff.
Absolutely. All right, well, you can reach out to Reneau at his information is linked in the description of this episode. Sorry, I couldn't talk there for a second.
Yeah.
You were very welcome, Quiet Minder. They said thank you both for sharing. You're very welcome. If you want to reach out to either myself or Reneau, you can do so. Our links are in the description of this episode. As always, our sponsor today, Phoenix Identity, has the Rockstar Method. Go and join, and you know, even if you learn one thing out of that, go and join and see if you can, you know, make it work for you to learn how to control your emotions. All right, thank you for joining me, Reneau, today. I really appreciate the conversation.
Well, thank you. It's been a good conversation. So
all right, well, thank you, everybody, for watching. If you would like to be a guest speaker, blogger, sponsor, or if you'd like to see a topic featured on the show, please reach out to us at justalivetv.com. Like, follow, and engage with the show. We are always here to support and love, and are always welcome to support and love as well. So make sure that you reach out. Let us know what you think. Excuse me. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler. You can find me at the links below, and I will talk to you all on the next episode. Again, thank you, Reneau. And I will talk to all of you next time. Bye.